If you are new to backup power systems and maybe even solar, then this is a great video for you, because if you are looking into something like a string inverter with also maybe a battery of your choice, whether it's a wall mount battery like this, or maybe even a server rack battery, or maybe you want something that's super simple like EcoFlow's Delta Pro Ultra. These are both great options depending on you and what your circumstances are, and also maybe your abilities. So hopefully this information in this video will help you out in choosing which one of these setups might be better for you. We're going to take a look at EcoFlow's Delta Pro Ultra first and what it takes to kind of set this up, because these are really beginner friendly and they're super simple that most people can handle this type of a setup if they want basic backup power needs. And then we're going to take a look at a string inverter and then also maybe a couple different types of batteries. We're not going to do a full installation, but just kind of give you an idea of what it looks like to wire one of these up. That way, if you're not really into wiring things and an electrician is more your route, then that's okay. Each one of these systems has their pros and cons, so this is really what this video is about, to hopefully find out which is a better way that you want to go, and we'll talk a little bit about pricing at the end of this, plus some pros and cons to each one of these systems. We'll start with the EcoFlow products first. Now, when you order this, you're going to get one inverter and then one battery. Unless you order more batteries, then you'll get more boxes of batteries. So we'll set this up real quick. We'll see how long it takes and also what's involved. Okay, now this battery is about 112 pounds, so you will probably want to get some help if you're not really physically able to lift this. You might need two people, or if you are by yourself, just make sure you use good technique as far as your lifting, and then also you're going to want to put it on that little roller cart that you had just set up. Okay, now that we have this stacked together, all we have to do is connect the battery to the inverter. So now we'll open the bottom battery door and the inverter battery door. You're going to take your connector, which will only plug in one way. So if that isn't the right way, go ahead and flip it over, plug it into the top, plug it into the bottom. And then if you want, you can go ahead and lock these in place. We're going to skip that for now. Now inside this black box is going to have a few goodies inside. You're going to have some solar cables. This is going to be for your low voltage input, which is behind this door. Then you have an AC charging cable and also a solar removal tool. This is needed to be able to take off the MC4s that are on the side of the unit. Now once you get this unit all put together, go ahead and turn it on. You'll also want to read your manual. You're going to want to download EcoFlow's app and then get this updated, because that is the first thing you do with pretty much everything nowadays. If you buy a new phone, you're going to want to update it to the latest firmware. It's the same thing with this and pretty much anything else that you buy nowadays. You want to make sure you have the latest firmware, that way it operates properly. Now after the firmware has been updated, this is basically ready for use. You can turn on the AC inverter. It is now ready to put out backup power, or if you want this portable to maybe a job site or whatever it is you want to do, all you have to do is plug in the device that you want to use and it is now ready to use. This literally took 15 minutes to set up for ready to use. Now if you're going to plug in solar, it will take just a couple extra minutes. I could easily put a portable panel outside, plug this in and start charging it. So when it comes to ease of use, this is super beginner friendly for anybody out there. They could easily do this and have backup power at home, or if you wanted to put this in maybe a service trailer or something else that has a ton of different uses, and it's super easy for the beginners out there who want to start their solar journey and have backup power. And if you want to charge this, you simply just plug it into the wall, take your charging cord, plug it in, and that's it. And now this is going to start charging, and you don't have to do anything like hook up complicated systems into a power panel and more. This is what's nice about this. It makes it so easy for beginners out there to be able to get started to do something. And this is a really robust system that has so far gained a ton of popularity for how simple it is. Now, this is a little bit more expensive than some of the other things out there, which we're going to discuss in a minute as we move over to the EG4 products. But that is one of the reasons this does have a higher price tag, is because you are eliminating really all the complicated steps that it takes. And now that we're done with this, let's go ahead and take a look at the EG4 setup to give you an idea what that kind of looks like, and also assembled into some kind of a battery system. Okay, now inside this box, there is some stuff that you want to look for. Under here, you have a couple things. You have some mounting hardware. Don't get rid of that. You also have this little guy, which you want to make sure you keep, which we'll go over that in just a minute. Then you have this piece. This is not garbage. This is a mounting template, so you want to make sure you keep that because it does hide inside this box pretty good. So it'd be nice if this was just kind of painted, or maybe they had a red X on it, but we'll throw that there so we can use that later. Okay, now before you buy this, there are some things you should know, is that unlike the EcoFlow system, it's basically a portable power station. It is not something that you mount that is permanent to the structure. So you don't need any permits with the EcoFlow system unless you're gonna get into like the EcoFlow Smart Home Panel 2 and more. That's something that's gonna be a little bit different. But if you're looking to buy this, depending on how you use it, you may want to check with your local county codes and to check for proper UL listings on what you can do. Because if you have a home backup battery system, like say some of the things that we'll look at in a minute, and then you want to tie it into your grid somehow, it's possible it may not be approved. Even though it is UL listed and it has some listings, there are still sometimes your local county codes may not actually approve it. So before you buy things like this, make sure you check that out first. Okay, so now we have to figure out where we're going to put that, how we're going to mount it. And we do have, again, this little mounting template that has holes at the top and the bottom. As you can see, for those little kind of tabs that stick out, one on the bottom and top. I'm not going to mount it there. I am going to go ahead and use this racking that I have up here, so we don't actually need this. And I think this location where the proton pack is, that's probably going to be where we're going to install this. Now you're probably wondering why I have a proton pack in here. Well, I'm in a building that used to be a bowling alley, and there was a story or a rumor a long time ago that this person actually got stuck in the bowling pins in the back, and they actually passed away. They died back there. So now there's these rumors, or at least the story is that that person who passed away back there is now part of the building, and he kind of haunts the place. So just in case, I am ready if that person ever does happen to show up. Okay, now there is some weight behind this, as it does weigh about 55 pounds, so you may need some help doing this part. I don't have any. Okay, so now that we have this mounted, well, now we need a battery. So this is where you're gonna have to decide what type of battery do you want, because there's several different types to choose from. You have server rack batteries, you have wall mount batteries, kind of like this EG4. You also have other outdoor mounted batteries that are able to be outdoors, and they are UL listed for that. So now this is where you have to decide what type of battery do you want, and also how large, and well, maybe how many. Okay, now in order to hook this up to this battery down here, we have to get behind this cover. Now be careful not to lose your screws, as they are quite small. Then we go ahead and pull off this panel. Okay, so now before you start connecting any kind of cables or anything beyond this point, this might be the time where you have to decide, is this something that you are going to continue on with, or is this something you may need an electrician for? Because if you're not comfortable doing electrical wiring, which there's a lot of people that are not, and that's okay, then you may want to consult your electrician, and I would suggest getting at least 3 quotes. Tell them what you are doing and say, hey, I would like to buy this certain system, and this is what my game plan is. That way you can get an accurate quote from that electrician and show them the products that you're wanting to buy and use, and tell them where you want to put it. That way you can give them the most accurate information, and also they can provide you with the most accurate quote. Now, if you're going to hook this up, you want to make sure you read the manual a couple times through, because you want to make sure everything is in the off position. All of your breakers, along with your DC disconnect, you also want to make sure this is off as well. So before you continue anything like hooking up the battery leads first, you want to make sure all of those are off. Now at the bottom of this, you do have all of your knockouts, and you can see it's labeled. You have communications here, battery input there, along with your loads, grid, generator side, and a photovoltaic input right here. So this is where you're also going to have to decide the type of conduit that you want to use. Now when it comes to your conduit, I've seen people use the flexible stuff or rigid EMT. It doesn't really matter. Some people actually use nothing at all and they run the wires straight in, which I think you should at least have a chase nipple in there or something that way can help protect it, because you can get chase nipples with little insulators that go on here to basically keep the wire off of the metal edges if they're bumping around or there is vibration that happens in this stuff. So at least do something like that. That way you have some sort of protection versus popping these knockouts out and not having any kind of protection next to it. I've seen some pretty crazy installations online where wires are really just kind of running everywhere. And so it is better to take those few precautions and at least run something. That way you have protections against the edge of this metal casing. Now most of these knockouts just pop out real easy. You just sit there and press on them and then just give them a couple of spins and then they will just literally fall right out. Now because this inverter doesn't come with anything and neither does the battery, you are going to have to buy some battery cables, and it is suggested in the manual approximately what size you need, which is usually about a 1 gauge depending on the battery and what you're doing. This is actually a 1/0 cable, which is a little bit too big for the setup that we're doing, but it will work for just a quick demonstration. Alright, so now that these are connected, you can now run this down to the battery of your choice, like this server rack battery down here. And again, these cables are overkill, so it's really just for the demonstration purposes, but make sure whenever you're hooking up your battery, you do have your DC breaker off, and you also have the unit off itself, because then you do need to hook up your communications up to here, which you can see that this one says battery communications. That's going to go into this left port right here, and the same thing with this port right here. You're going to go up to the CAN bus right here, and then run that up. Now if you look, there's a package that says right here BACCOM on it. That's going to be your battery communication cable, and you'll just hook this up to the battery of your choice that you're going to be using. Now on the side right here is where you can hook up your little Wi-Fi dongle. That's what this little white box was. And inside here is you'll find this little dongle that you can go ahead and plug in, which goes right up there. And so now you have communications for your inverter. That way you can do all your firmware updates and more. Now for me, I'm not really the type of person who likes to just leave batteries on the ground. I've seen people do this. They'll just stack 2 or 3 of them on the ground, and it does work, but for me, I prefer something else a little bit cleaner. If you are going to do server rack batteries, then it's not a bad idea to go ahead and buy a server rack case. These are super simple to install. They do come with wheels, and so this can be a little bit mobile if you want it to be, but you do have bus bars on the sides for your positives and negatives, and this is just a mini rack. This one will hold 3 batteries, and then you can put your main battery cables on here and either run them out the top. You also have knockouts on the side and more, so it does give you some options as far as how you want your setup. Now there are turn-on procedures for all this stuff. The same thing with your inverter. Once you get this on, you will have to do your firmware updates and then set this up for the type of battery that you have. Now, all in all, this only took me about 30 to 45 minutes just because I already had most of this stuff in house and it was ready to go. But for you, if you're going to install this, you'll have to go to the hardware store, get certain size of conduit and more. And so these are things you're going to want to think about if this is the type of system that you want. Again, are you going to do this yourself, or do you want to get an electrician to do this? And if you are, this will add added expense. Okay, so hopefully that gives you just a small idea of what it takes to put the EcoFlow Delta Pro Ultra together. And if you're going to do something like a string inverter that's behind me, obviously it takes a little bit more dedication, a little bit more knowledge. And again, you may even have to hire somebody to install it, so that will add to your costs. So if we talk about costs right now, the Delta Pro Ultra with just one battery is, let's just say, $5,000 flat, depending on when you buy it. You can find it on Amazon for around $49.99. These are the lower prices that we see, sometimes $47.99. It just all depends on the type of deals, if it's a holiday or not, and I usually have discounts that you can also stack on top of that. So if you're looking for something super simple and you're not comfortable with wiring or anything like that, which is okay, the Delta Pro Ultra has actually been a very good unit, and we'll talk about pros and cons here in just a second. Now, if we just take a quick look at pricing when it comes to the XP6000, this inverter runs roughly about $1,400, again, depending on when you buy it. And I also have discounts for this stuff, which I'll leave links down below so you can shop around, which I suggest always. You should really take a look at Signature Solar, where you can pick up a lot of this stuff. You can also check out Shop Solar. They also have a lot of good discounts and things that you can bundle together. That way you can save on shipping. And also when you bundle stuff, this means that you can save huge as far as buying things all together, like the batteries and maybe some solar panels as well. This gives you big discounts. That way you don't have to just piece everything together, and you kind of make one big bulk purchase. And you can even find the Delta Pro Ultra at Shop Solar, which it can be bundled with certain products like extra batteries, solar panels, some other things like disconnects as well. So I'll leave information down below where you can check that out. Now again, when it comes to the XP6000 inverter, that is going to run about $1,400, and you're going to need a battery. So then that's where you got to decide, do you want one battery, 3 batteries, or more? The XP says that it needs to have about 200 amp hours for it to be optimal if you're going to use it in more of an off-grid situation, backup battery situation, whatever it is you're going to do, 2 batteries is kind of ideal. And each one of those batteries is around $1,300 for the server rack battery that's shown here. Now if you want something like the wall mount battery, you can buy these for outdoor rated as well. They're just a little bit more, but these run around $3,300. So if you just do the string inverter with a server rack battery, about $2,700. Or if you're going to do the string inverter with a wall mount battery, it's going to be about $4,700. But the wall mount battery gives you 14.3 kilowatt hours as opposed to the Delta Pro Ultra for $5,000, which they're almost the same price at that point. You're only getting 6.1 kilowatt hours. But herein lies the big thing a lot of people seem to not talk about, is that when you buy the XP inverter, that's all you get. You get an inverter, a couple wires, and that's it. You're going to have to go pick up all of your couplings. You're going to have to go pick up battery cables as well. The battery cables can range anywhere from $60 to $150, $200 depending on the type that you get. Not to mention racking that you may need, or other types of things that you're going to have to use in order to get this up and running. So all the cabling and wires you're going to have to buy yourself and source that out. So that might take a little extra game planning on your part, depending on how you're going to set this up. Or if you're not going to do it, then again, you will have to find somebody to install it, and then you'll have to work out the pricing on that, because you will look at something like this being installed from a certified electrician. They could charge anywhere from maybe $600 to $700 on the lowest if the installation is super simple and you don't need much, maybe all the way to a couple grand depending on your situation and your labor rates where you are. So those expenses can really add up. Now, as far as pros and cons to each of these, well, again, you're going to have to decide, do you want to just pay one price, be able to kind of plug it in and be done with it, plug some solar in and that's it? It's super simple with EcoFlow Delta Pro Ultra because everything is kind of a plug-and-play system ready to go. And that's one of the reasons that has gotten so popular, because people can do this without having to hire the electricians, which again can be very costly. But if you do want to get your hands dirty and do a little bit more of a learning curve and expand at a cheaper rate, you can go with XP6000, XP12000. They also make some hybrid inverters that are much larger, which these ones can actually be AC coupled. That way, if you do have an existing solar system and you don't have battery backup, you can go with that, such as say an N-phase system that you might already have the microinverters with. The EG4 18 kPV unit, that one can actually be AC coupled to those systems. So that way, if you wanted to expand and have battery backup without maybe changing your interconnect agreement, which you will have to check, because sometimes if you modify the system in any way, they will end up throwing you onto a new interconnect agreement, like a NEM 3, which some of us who were on a NEM 2 program, that's kind of out west in California for net metering, Most of us like the NEM2 program because we get 1 kilowatt per 1 kilowatt. So if I generate one and I don't use it, I get to put that into a credit. And then when I do need it, I can pull 1 kilowatt. Versus the new one, they only want to give you, I think it's a third of a kilowatt credit. So if I generate one, they only want to give me a third back. Now when it comes to problems with these units, well, there's a lot of these units that are out there that are being ran successfully. You are going to have plenty of people out there who dislike EcoFlow products, and you're going to have plenty of people out there who dislike EG4 products or Enphase or Tesla, whatever it is. It's just like Ford and Chevy. Everybody has their brands that they like. There are thousands of these EcoFlow units that are being ran successfully with no problems at all. I've been one of the users since it came out, and there were some firmware issues that needed to happen in the beginning, but now that those have been taken care of, the unit is up and running, and it's been actually pretty flawless. Now, as far as the XP6000, this is a relatively newer unit that's only been out on the market for maybe about a year, and some of the complaints are that the fact that the fans are pretty noisy. So if you happen to be in an area where you might be able to hear the fans of this unit, they are a little bit louder. So that was one of the biggest complaints. Also, a couple firmware things. When some of these reach state of charge like 100%, sometimes the inverters were actually shut off. It'll throw an error code and more. So none of these units are flawless. They can have issues with firmware. The same thing with the 12,000 is actually having a little bit of issues with the firmware. You can read this stuff online. It's not hidden at all. So if you are looking for a perfect unit, well, there really isn't one that exists. So again, every one of these has their pros, they all have their cons, and they've each had their issues while they grow up and enter the market, because again, with them being new, they're going to have maybe a couple firmware issues they're going to have to work out, and that can take several months. Now, I will be doing some more side-by-side testing. That way you can maybe find out which one of these is going to be a better item for you. Again, it's all going to be depending on your situation and also local codes. If you have a certain string inverter that you are wanting to bring into service and bring it online as a battery backup system with maybe an existing solar setup, you need to consult your electrician, your interconnect agreement, and more. Just because you buy a system like this doesn't mean your county code is going to allow you to actually connect it up into the grid. Some of this stuff does have UL listings, but it doesn't actually mean that your county is going to approve it. So again, if you're going to do any of this stuff and you plan on maybe hooking it up to the grid, then you definitely need to talk with your local municipalities, get them on board with what you were wanting to do. That way, if you get this commissioned and you want to turn it on and somebody comes to inspect it, you don't get that surprise where they say no, because there are some people out there on YouTube who have bought items like this and then they go to have it commissioned to turn on, and then they find out, well, you know what, their local county will not, or their local power company will not allow it to be turned on because it doesn't meet some certain listings out there. So again, these are things that you will need to do. Again, when it comes to the EcoFlow Delta Pro being a non-permanent mount item, you can really get away with kind of a lot of stuff. Now again, this is only if you want to permit things. I'm not your mom, your dad. Whatever you do, it's your house, is your own business. I'm just giving you the information with this stuff back here. So if you're the type of person who does not like electrical at all and just wants to get involved in having some backup power for when the power goes out occasionally, I highly suggest looking at the EcoFlow Delta Pro Ultra. It really is a simple solution to having backup power, versus this is so much more expandable and also kind of a little bit cheaper in the long run. But again, if you have to have an electrician do it, it could equal out to almost be exactly the same. Now I hope this information helped you out if you're looking into backup battery systems, and I hope to see you guys in another video.